Welcome to Meliora's channel, your go-to place for C# and data analysis tutorials, products hands-on demos, and insider secrets to keep you at the cutting edge of innovation. Our goal is to break down complex tech topics to a level that you will easily understand to supercharge your skills. Without further ado, let's jump right in.
Welcome back. In today's lecture, we're going to be looking at the errors in Microsoft Excel, their possible causes, and the rectification. There is a provided Excel file in the resources that you can download to follow along as we go through each error. So, first error is REF. The ref error typically happens when a cell, a formula or function is referencing is deleted or out of range, as with lookups, which you are going to see. So looking at the examples here, we have two scenarios. One here is when the cell is deleted, and this one is a lookup with the cell out of range, which you're going to see as well. So in the first instance here, we can see that cell C5 is being divided by a cell that is now deleted because I deleted it. And I remember that I was dividing C5 by cell C6, and the value I placed in C6 was 7. So the way to simply rectify this is just to change what the reference here that was now deleted. So I'm just going to click the now available C6 and press enter, and that's what we have. So how did that error come about? Well, I simply deleted this. As I said, you can see it's back. So we can simply do a Control Z to undo that deletion when that kind of error happens to get our value back. Now, the reason this happens is because each cell is uniquely identified. Even if you delete one and the name now becomes C6, each of them have their own unique identifiers. So, what about here? This is using a VLOOKUP, and we can see we're still having that same ref error here. So let's take a look at why that is. We are going to cover VLOOKUP and all other lookup functions in the lookup section. But let's take a look at this. So we have here ID 4. The ID is 4, which we are searching for in the ID column. And if we now go here, so we are searching for the cell value in cell G11. And we can now see our table array is D10 to E15. And this is where the problem is. We can see the column index is 3. Now, if you notice, even though the table has 3 columns, we are only referencing 2 columns for the table array. So this only has 2 columns, so we cannot possibly have a column index 3 for this table. So what are we going to do? Well, we simply change this from 3 to 2 because what we want is the score, and the score in reference to this particular selection for the table is in column 2, 1, 2. So we just change that 3 to 2, press enter, and then we no longer have that error. The next error we're going to be looking at is the divide by 0 error. The divide by 0 error happens when a number is divided by 0. So it's a very simple error. So if we come to the Excel file with the sheet there, we have a table here where we have some food items, their unit prices, total prices for the sale, and then quantity bought. So since we have the unit price and total price, we are simply dividing the total price by the unit price to then get the quantity of items bought. And we can see that the unit price for vegetable oil is missing, which is why we are having this error, because we are now dividing this total price by 0. So that is why we are having this divide by 0 error. Now I happen to know the unit price here. So if it's a situation where you'd have to, or you don't know it, then you may want to omit this, or you would have to go and look for that value. But I happen to know that value, which is around 15. That was an error. And now that error is now gone because now we are getting the proper quantity, which is 2. The next error we're going to look at is the value error. Now, this is a general error, but it typically occurs when we have wrong data types in formula, so a data type mismatch. For example, trying to divide a number by a text. You can't divide a string. Division is not a function, a string uh, can do. So you'd get a value error there. Okay, so this is the Excel file again. So here we have some values. We have X here, Y, some values for Y and X. And then in column C, we now have X divided by Y. And that is what we have here. And we are now getting the value error because we do not have a number here, but a text. And we are trying to now divide a text by a number, which is why we're getting this error. So we have a data type mismatch. So what we can simply do is remove this and put back the original numeric value if we have it. So if we don't, we'll have to just remove that. But I happen to know the original value, which was 36. And now that error is gone because now we are properly doing division with numerical values. The next error we're going to be looking at is the NA error, which is not available. So it typically occurs when data in a formula or function cannot be found. It typically happens when using lookup functions. And when using lookups, it can result from data type mismatch or extra spaces in values. Coming to the Excel spreadsheet, I have here three examples. These are all using VLOOKUP. So in the first one, we're trying to find the name and get the score. So we're checking the name column for a name. And you can see that the name AA is not in the name column, which is why we're getting this not available error because it simply isn't there. So to rectify this is very simple. Instead of AA, we should just be looking for A, and then we'll rightfully get the score, which is 34. For example B, we see that we are accurately searching the name A, but we are still getting a not available error. Now, this one is a bit more tricky to spot. Like I said, extra spaces. The extra spaces can also come from the values themselves. This is why data cleaning is very important, and removing extra spaces is also very important because we can, if you check very well in the name column, we can see that there is an extra space before A. So if I go and do a single backspace, hold on. Now we're actively getting the correct score for A, which is 34. And the last instance where you can have this not available is the data type mismatch. So we can see here we're looking for the ID, which is 2, but we are getting the not available error. Why is that? If you notice, the ID is a numeric value. However, the value here is, if you see the alignment, it's a string. So if we now see it, number in this cell is formatted as a text or preceded by an apostrophe. So this is what can happen. So I just use the apostrophe there to convert this into a text. This is Visual Basic actually. So that's how you can do that. So if I just go and then remove that apostrophe and click enter, then it's as now accurately formatted as a numeric value, and then we are now accurately getting 89. Next we have the name error. So this error typically happens when you misspell function name. So it happens when you type in a function, Excel can find that function via name, so it throws that error. Okay, so on the Excel spreadsheet, we just have some values here, an array of values X, and we're trying to find the mean of those values, which is, the average. And we can see we're getting a name error here. And if we click in, we can see that average is misspelled with an extra E. Okay, so what we have to do is simply correct the spelling, and then we have average. and then we'll just type enter, and then we are now getting the proper value for the average of these numbers. Okay. The next error we're going to be looking at is the norm error. So this is very similar to the math error on calculations. So it happens when a calculation cannot be performed as specified. For example, finding the logarithm of 0 or the square root of a negative number. These things simply do not exist, so you will get an error. Okay, so coming to the Excel spreadsheet, we can see the two instances where we're getting that norm error. So if we see here, we're trying to find the logarithm of 0, which doesn't exist, so we will have that error. So to rectify it, we can just change that to a number that the logarithm does exist for. And we can see here that we're having another norm error when we're trying to find the square root of a negative number. So what we can simply do is remove that negative sign, and then we are now actively finding the square root of 2. The next error we're going to be looking at is the calc error. So this happens when a formula or function calculations runs into an error. For example, this is the most common one, typing a function with no inputs. Okay, so on the spreadsheet, I just have here an array of numbers, and we can see the calc error here. And what seems to be the problem? Okay, so we have our equal to, and then our function, which is sum, but we can see we don't have any inputs. So we have the function, no arguments, nothing. We didn't even add a parentheses. So how are we going to fix that? Well, it's simple. We'll just go ahead and open the parentheses and then select our range of values to impute into the sum function, and then we now have the appropriate sum. Another error I want us to look at is the null error. So this error is a bit rare, but it happens when people use an intercept operator instead of a colon when defining ranges. Okay, so here on the Excel sheet, we just have students' IDs here, and we can see that we have each of their scores for various subjects, math, biology, and we're just getting the averages of all the students' scores for those particular subjects. And we now have the null error here. And if we compare, we can see that we have a colon here to define the range, but we can see that we do not have anything here, just a simple space. So to fix that error, all we need to do is put the proper assignment operator for the range, which is the colon, and then press enter. Now, to further explain exactly what the intersect operator is, I have here two examples that I'm going to show you exactly what it's doing. So say we want to do a sum, okay? And we take this range from here to here, and we put a space, and then take this range here. Close the parentheses and press enter. We can see that we have a value of 120. Now what is actually being summed is not this range and this range again. What's being summed is actually the intercept between those two ranges to give us 120. And to prove this, let's make a sum of just that intercept. And we can see that we have the exact same value. So the intercept in this place is that space. So it's telling the sum to get the intercept of these two ranges that we imputed and then sum that. To show it again using this structure here. So what we want is this area. So we're just going to go ahead and do sum. This whole range here. A space. And then this whole range here. And then we get 35. And if we check, this sum of there also gives us 35. So that's what the intercept operator does. The opposite of it is the comma, which is the union. The next error is the spill error. So the spill error typically occurs when using array functions where the results spill into cells that are not empty. That's when you're going to see that error usually. Okay, so here we are in the Excel spreadsheet and we can see the spill error there. And we can see that we have a value E here because you can see the spill goes all the way down here. So we just have a list of scores and we're just doing a simple if statement using a dynamic array A2 to A21 and we're just checking if it's less than 50. If it is, then you want to return below average or else you just want to return good. So what are we going to do? Simply, we have to remove that value that is blocking our function from going through. And when we do that, we can see that we are now getting the proper array with all the correct return values. The last error we're going to look at is probably the most simple of all the errors. So it's just these strings of hashes. So this is a very simple error. It just cannot display value. It simply is Excel is telling you that the space or that it has currently is not enough to display the value. So I just gave a very simple example here. And we can just see in cells A2 to A16, we have some numeric values there. So all I'm going to do is increase the width. And now we can see what's there and we're no longer getting that cannot display value error. Okay, and that is it for errors in Excel. Well done sitting through the lecture, and I'll see you in the next one.
Thank you for watching, and if you learned something new or enjoyed this video, be sure to show us support by clicking like and subscribe. Your support helps us to bring you even better content, so stay tuned for the next exciting video. You can also click the link below to see other free and paid videos on other exciting topics. If the click did not work, kindly copy the link and paste on your browser. Thank you and see you in the next video.